Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lied to the grand jury so many times in the case involving the murder of Tupac Shakur that it's not even funny. Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to sit down and watch this. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY, Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor. Click on the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you is egregious. What I'm about to show you is, it was basically unnecessary. Also, the irresponsibleness of Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and him lying to the grand jury on numerous occasions after being on YouTube for so long, telling so many stories in interviews and otherwise. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to get right into it. Right now, what I'm about to show you is a conversation from Frank Alexander from the MGM Grand that night. They're just getting to the fight, and I want to show you something, and you're going to understand what I'm talking about. Look, Frank is saying, we hung out there for a while, and as the fight began drawing closer, I watched Tupac begin losing patience. Tupac said, I hate this shit. Suge does this all the time. It was 15 minutes before fight time and Tupac was getting restless. The pre-fights were over and Tyson and Seldon were up next. Fuck this shit. Every time we go somewhere, he always has to be fucking late. Tupac's eyes were blazing. I didn't want to come to Vegas. No fucking way. We're gonna miss the fucking fight. Despite security efforts to keep crowds away from him, fans kept working their way towards him, taking pictures, asking for more autographs. I watched him get visibly more tense as each minute ticked by. Go call Reggie and find out where he is. Meaning, go call Reggie and find out where Suge is. So Frank said, I took off towards a phone, knowing that he knew and I knew it wouldn't do a damn bit of good. Suge always made him wait, and this night was no different. I made the call anyway. A thinly veiled token attempt to ease Pac's tensions. Waiting on Suge was a reoccurring problem. We'd call a meeting and wait 3 or 4, sometimes 5 hours for Suge to turn up. The fact that this was a Tyson fight apparently didn't make any difference. I'm gonna get my own goddamn tickets, Tupac said. But we both knew the truth. We weren't going anywhere. We were gonna do what we always did. Wait on Suge. I want to point you to something. Tupac tells Frank, go call Reggie and find out where he is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very detailed story, Frank, of what happened. They're already at the MGM. You see, it's 15 minutes before the fight starts, right? I want to point you to the grand jury, and I want you to understand that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would lie. He would lie and try to substitute Tupac for Frank Alexander. Watch this. The question, what happened? Were you able to go to the fight? This is the grand jury testimony he gave. I didn't go because of an issue at the club, of course, and us being unorganized, where to even the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight. You see that? The question was, what happened? Were you able to go to the fight? He said, I didn't go because of the issues at the club. Of course, and us being unorganized, were to even the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone did, and pretty much informed me that he's tired of going to the fight late, because Mike Tyson fights usually be over back then in the first round, and that even Mr. Shakur was his music he had. Pause. Ladies and gentlemen, Tupac didn't call Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. Who called Reggie the Rat Wright Jr.? Who called him? Frank called him. You can see right here. Go call Reggie and find out where he is. Reggie then goes and tells the grand jury that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone always did, and pretty much informed me that he's tired of going to the fight late. That's not Tupac talking to Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. That's Frank Alexander. Now, this is at the fight. When the fight's about to start, you seen what it said, right? It was what? It was 15 minutes before the fight was about to start. Tupac said, Frank said, I watched him get visibly tense. Each minute ticked by. Go call Reggie and find out where he is. I took off towards the phone, knowing that he knew and I knew that it wouldn't do a damn bit of good. Suge always made him wait, and this night was no different. Reggie goes to the grand jury and tells them that Tupac called him. Tupac didn't call him. Why would he do that? Once again, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. in his story, in the retelling of Frank's story, you got to understand, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would never know how Frank and them got to the MGM Grand if Frank didn't tell his story. That was Tupac's and Frank's story to tell. As you see, they were there. Frank was talking about security people rolling up, wanting autographs, wanting pictures, Tupac being visibly upset, and all of the other things. As a matter of fact, you can look at the MGM tape when Tupac and Frank are walking through the hotel and Frank's following closely behind them. Ladies and gentlemen, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is a liar. Why would he say Tupac called him? Mr. Shakur called me. He didn't call him. Tupac never would call Reggie on the phone. That wasn't Tupac's a job. Tupac's not gonna go where? To a payphone? Think about it. If Tupac were to call Reggie, Tupac would have a phone right there where he could tell Frank, here, take this phone, call Reggie up. Tupac didn't have a phone. It's clear to see in the video when they're walking through the MGM Grand. Right? So much so that we know that it's not true, right? So what did Tupac call Reggie on? I'll wait. I'm gonna ask that. So if what was being spilled, what did Tupac call Reggie on? If Tupac called Reggie and asked what Suge Knight was, what did he call him on? Tupac ain't going to no goddamn payphone to call no Reggie on no phone. But guess what? Frank would, right? Why would Frank do that? Because that's Frank's job, right? Look, what did Frank say he did? Frank said what? When he went there, he said, you know what? A thinly veiled token to attempt to ease Pac's tensions. Right? What'd he say? I made the call anyway. A thinly veiled token to ease Tupac's tensions. But Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. would lie to the grand jury and say Tupac called him looking for Mr. Knight. Why didn't he say Frank called him? Because that's who called him. Frank called him. You know why he didn't say that Frank called him? because Reggie had told the lie before about him finding out. It wasn't until Suge Knight them got to the fight, that he found out that Frank was the only one on him. That would be a lie now, wouldn't it? That's what he said. He said it wasn't until Suge showed up at the fight that I found out that Frank was the only bodyguard on Tupac. That would be a lie now, wouldn't it? What? Hold on. Well, he's saying Tupac called him looking for Mr. Knight and pretty much informed him that he was tired of going to the fight late. Isn't it the same conversation that Frank gave? So where did Reggie get that information from? He hijacked Frank's story, replaced Frank with Tupac to make it sound better. When in fact, Tupac had no phone. What did Tupac call Frank on? What did Tupac call Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. on? Nothing. He didn't call him. Frank called him. Get it? So as we sit here, and I'm telling you this, you can see how Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. went to the grand jury and just told a plethora of lies. I'm going to give you it again. Watch this now. You gotta pay attention to what I'm about to show you, because what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is saying, that Tupac called him 2 times in the same night. Y'all ready? I want you to pay attention, man. This is sickening. I told you before. Watch this. Right? Here we go. His space. It was getting close to the fight time. I needed a phone to check in with Reggie in case Suge was looking for him, looking for Tupac. This is earlier in the night, right? This is when Tupac was at the MGM and then dipped back to the Luxor. He always wanted to know where Tupac was at all times. The fucked up thing was I didn't have my security staff MO cell phone. While I was on vacation, Kevin used it, and since he and Reggie were fighting, I didn't have it on me because Kevin wasn't coming to Vegas. I couldn't believe I'm rolling with Death Row's $1 Million Boy, one of the biggest rap stars in the world, and I got to go use the payphone. This is the first time Frank had to use the payphone. Right? What I just showed you was the second time during the fight. I must have left him for about a minute, long enough to leave Reggie a message this time, right? From the public phone a couple of feet away before making my way back to the table. Pac wasn't there, right? But hold on. So Reggie then, he goes and he tells this story right here. This is another story that Reggie told in an interview. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. says what? Frank had been on vacation the week prior. The thing is, Pac hated Frank. That's why he shook Frank at the casino. You see what I'm talking about? He's saying that he shook Frank at the casino, meaning this right here, right? Meaning this right here. He's saying that Tupac shook Frank at the casino. You need to look at both of these to understand what it is. Right? Tupac didn't shake Frank at the casino. Michael Moore was with Tupac because Michael Moore was on the opposite side of Tupac early in that evening. This is early in the evening before the situation that I just showed you before, right? So now, listen to what Reggie says next. Reggie says, at the top part, Pac called and said, why the fuck? I told you I don't want this dude on me no more. I told you I want the one I want is Hacky. I told him the other guys were at the club. He didn't care. He really liked Kevin. I can't say he didn't like Kevin. He liked dealing with Kevin and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen. So twice, within a few hours, I would say, a few hours, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is claiming that Tupac called him, right? The first time he said that Tupac called him was when? When did Tupac call him the first time? Tupac called me looking for Mr. Knight, right? Then you go back down here. Tupac called him to let him know that he didn't like Frank. He didn't call him, and Frank didn't lose him. Tupac didn't call Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and say anything about him hating Frank. You see how these two lies connect? Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was mad at Frank Alexander because Frank didn't go along with his lie. All of these stories were told after Frank had died. And Frank didn't go along with the lie about the chain being snatched at the MGM Grand, and Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was mad about that. And so he tried to put himself, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., tried to put himself as the hero, as the one who was endearing or endeared to Tupac instead of Frank, right? Pac called and told me this is 2 times. Remember, Frank shook him at the casino. Frank basically saying, you know what? After I came back, what he said, before making my way back to the table, Tupac was gone. He wasn't there. Tupac didn't shake him. And so Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. says, in between this time that Tupac is going back to the Luxor, that Pac called him. Again, listen to me. If Tupac called him earlier in the evening, right, to ask him, what did he say? Listen to me, y'all got to pay attention with what I'm telling you now. Look, check it out. Because this is funny as hell, because you can see right clearly through the lie. Watch this. He said, if Tupac called him early in the evening, right, looking for Mr. Knight, later in the evening, looking for Mr. Knight already, he would have already known what he needed to know. So he's saying that earlier he calling him and he's telling him about why you got Frank on me, right? But then later he's saying that Tupac is calling him again to look for who? To look for Suge. Where he at? He hate going to the fight late, right? You see how those two basically wipe out each other, or those two lies void out each other? Earlier he calling him, he don't like Frank. What? Let me tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, that part didn't even happen, right? The only part that happened was what? Frank called Reggie early in the evening, like he said, what Frank said? Frank said he called Reggie early in the evening and left a message, right, to basically let Suge know where Tupac was. That was on Frank's volunteering, and Frank did that as a courtesy, right? To call, I needed to check in with Reggie in case Suge was looking for him. That was voluntary, right? So that being voluntary, Frank didn't need to do that. He felt like as a security measure, you know what I mean? He wanted to check in with Reggie in case Suge was looking for Tupac, because he always wanted to know what Tupac was, right? So now, Reggie already knows that Frank is on Tupac. But he would tell this lie later on that, oh, that's why Tupac shook Frank at the casino. He didn't shake him at the casino. That was a lie Reggie made up. Pac called him early in the evening. Pac didn't call him. Pac didn't call him at all early in the evening. Frank called him, as you can see right here. And Frank told the story about Tupac getting lost. If Frank doesn't tell that story, Reggie couldn't tell the lie. You see what I'm saying? So now, you go back here, which is even more important. You go back here, right? What happened? Were you able to go to the fight? No, I didn't, because of the issues at the club, of course. And us being unorganized, where to even the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight. And everyone, as everyone always did, and pretty much informed me that he was tired of going to the fight late. Because Mike Tyson's fights usually be over back then in the first round. Tupac didn't call him. Frank called him. Because Tupac asked Frank to call him. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. When you really truly understand the things that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. has been doing, there is no ambiguity at all. He went and he lied to the grand jury on numerous occasions. But this one right here, you can clearly see through it, right? You can clearly see through it. So he's claiming that he talked to Tupac twice that night. And he didn't talk to Tupac not once. Because if Tupac didn't have a phone to give Frank, here, use my phone, to call him up, to call Reggie. Frank ain't going to use no payphone. Tupac didn't have a phone. He didn't have a community. If that was the case, Tupac would have called Suge directly. You don't think Tupac and Suge, if he had a phone on him, he would have Suge's number directly? You think he needed to go through Reggie? He didn't have an apparatus to communicate. And neither did Frank. So when he went to the grand jury, right? When he went to the grand jury and he told this lie right here, it's perjury, man. All you got to do is match up the statements. He's perjured himself. Ladies and gentlemen, your boy DELRAY, straight gang.